I hit the button. The button's been hit. We're live. Hello, everybody. Roy's back.
Yeah, whatever.
Welcome
Roy's
to
back.
Red Hoop Talk.
I'm Shannon O'Loughlin. I'm the Executive Director and Attorney of the Association on American Indian Affairs, here with you live on Red Hoop Talk. And who's this guy?
I'm Roy Melendez, and I'm nobody in particular or nobody special, just here every once in a while when Shannon allows me.
We're glad to see you back, Roy. We know.
Oh, it's good. So good to be back. You don't even know where the places I've been, the things I've seen, sis. Oh, boy. Man, I'm telling you.
A Dr. Seuss story, or what am I about to hear?
Well, no, I was in Wisconsin during the whole incident there. I was in Chicago, and I was actually working in Indiana, and I was working in Toledo area. And then I went to Chicago. I did some work in Chicago, and then I had to go to Wisconsin to the Madison airport. And wow, what a beautiful! I've never been to Madison before. What a beautiful little town that is. It's cool down there. It's really cool. And but I had to go down there after the whole shooting thing went down. So it was like, you know what they were doing? They were taking mattresses outside, and everywhere I was driving, there were mattresses all over the place with messages spray painted all over them.
Oh,
like, you know, Black Lives Matter. I even saw, I saw an AIM logo out there too on a mattress. So so there was, they were protesting. It was, and this was like downtown Madison area where they have older homes that have been kind of renovated. So they're kind of a nicer area of the town, but it was strange. They were putting mattresses out on the street with graffiti all over them. It's kind of odd. So anyway, that was my experience out there, but it was kind of spooky and scary because there was just riots and everything going on all over the place, and a lot of protesting, and Chicago was kind of the same. I didn't see the blood on the streets like they all claim that there is in Chicago. There's supposedly like you like slip and fall from all the blood that's on the streets in Chicago. So, but I didn't see that. I actually thought Chicago was a very clean town, to be honest.
Yeah, well, there are folks that have an interest in blowing up things like that, and changing what reality really is. But you know, all of this traveling that you're doing, and is God or whomever is my witness, Roy, I got to find you a job in Indian country. We got to quit you working for.
I would love to. So any native companies out there that are looking to employ a semi-washed up
will sell what he's got to sell. He'll sell, you know, that, what is that proverbial like marshland and
I've done my time in sales, and I have done my time in operations management. So you know, I was a rigger by trade, a millwright by trade. Spent 30 years doing that, and now I worked in an operations capacity. Now I'm actually working as a consultant for a company that installs, you know, X-ray machines and MRI units and equipment into airports for, you know, doing CT scans and body scans and all those kinds of things. So that's what I do for a living now. But if anyone in Indian country needs that kind of guy, or somebody who can sell marshland to people that live in the desert, then you know, I'm your guy.
What else is going on, Roy? I mean, I've got just a little bit of Indian country news, but
Let's hear it.
Well, the only Native American man who's been on up for execution was executed this past week.
I heard.
It's been really interesting to watch and listen to people who are interested in the issue. Because it involves Navajo Nation sovereignty and their ability to set punishment for their own people for crimes committed on their territory against their citizens.
Yeah. Irregardless of your view on the death penalty, it really is about the tribal sovereignty that was, kind of stepped on here.
But what's so interesting, like on all of our postings that the association puts out about this issue, people were getting all bent out of shape saying that the association supports murderers. So because we were making statements that the Navajo Nation should have the right to determine sentencing according to their beliefs against capital punishment, there was just those, those weird, what do you call them? Those people that say a lot of bullshit online. Who are those people called?
Trolls? Are you talking about trolls?
Yes, those people. So we're basically twisting what
res troll
was a res troll. I wonder what they look like.
You got some res trolls in your chat rooms.
They have the big old wild hair like I do, and like a troll doll. Anyway, I had a great grandmother who used to like make clothes for trolls and sell them at like auctions and flea markets and stuff. It was just this weird thing. But anyway, what were we talking about?
You were talking about the execution of the Navajo man and how that the right of punishment was usurped by the federal government versus giving them the opportunity to make their sentencing decisions.
Right.
And once again, it was a political move. It's an election year, and it's a shame that somebody's life was put on the line, especially a fellow Native human. Not that I'm particular to any human being. Every human being is important, but it's sad that was used as a pawn move, in this political climate. And once again, a brown person was made the example, and it's a sad thing. I mean, and my personal opinion on the death penalty is that it doesn't work. And if one human being was put to death incorrectly, wrongfully, and we know that there are hundreds of cases of that, then the whole system doesn't work. You can't. I don't think that the system should be in charge of who lives and who dies. But that's just my personal opinion. But like you said, it really was, whether Navajo Nation wanted to, execute this man or, give him a life sentence or, whatever it was, they should have had the right to do so.
Yeah.
And,
Did you watch any of the Republican National?
I couldn't.
I kept looking at it going, I should watch this. I should know what's happening. And
I tried to do the same. I was like, okay, Shannon's going to ask me this question. I knew you would. And it's like, okay, do I watch it? And I turned it on, and it was that one blonde lady was talking, the one who's like, she's already in trouble for like.
I only know who's in Trump's who's
immediate circle.
People from Saturday Night Live. That's the. I don't really know who the real people are.
Well, this gal was up there, and I know she was in trouble herself, and she was up there talking about the opposing side and how they were corrupt.
His daughter?
No. Her name. She's some attorney general from Florida, I think, or something like to that nature. And she actually, maybe even she was a judge, but she actually had some say so in tossing one of Trump's cases away. So it was she was kind of an influential person, him getting off on one of the things, one of his many crimes that he's already committed. I mean, bottom line is this guy's fighting for his life. Donald Trump is fighting for his life, because if this guy doesn't get reelected, he's going to jail. I mean, there's so much shit that this guy has done. He's going to end up going to jail. So that's really what this is about, is him not going to jail.
Well, it was, I found it a little bit disheartening, and it's hard. It's kind of hard to know how to talk about the issues, because the vice president of the Navajo Nation spoke at the convention, the Republican National Convention,
Mm-hmm.
and was supporting Trump and Trump giving money for the CARES Act and different things. And what came out after that were a lot of people saying that the vice president of the Navajo Nation misrepresented the facts, which is true. So it's, the CARES Act, for example, the administration was absolutely opposed to tribes getting any CARES Act money. It was Congress. It was actually the Democrats in Congress that pushed for that. So it's a little weird, and it feels a little wonky that you have the Navajo Nation seeming to be split on who should be our leader.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed any of that, or if anybody in our chat room. I'm noticing a lot of people saying hello on the chat room. Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody in the chat room, and thank you for welcoming me back. Yes, it's strange being out on the road now all the time and living in and out of hotels and suitcases, but it's good to be back. I'm leaving again tomorrow, unfortunately, but I'm back for now. And Lance, again, always with great comments. Yes, my cousin tribe, the Coshada tribe of Louisiana and Alabama, were in the hurricanes. We're in Hurricane Laura. I guess it was two hurricanes that came together or something. I don't know. I know that they had two coming in, and then I think Laura hit. So sending good thoughts. Yes, sending good thoughts to the Coshadas in Louisiana and Alabama.
Yeah.
That was there's a lot of people that got hurt from that hurricane. And it's not the first time that tribes have been hit by it. The Caddos got hit pretty hard the last time too. My cousin Michael actually lost everything in, what was the big one? Andrew? Was that Andrew, the one that was in the 90s?
That's too far back.
Early 90s. Yeah, he lost everything. Michael lost everything in that Andrew thing. So Trump, JD said Trump in jail. I didn't think of that. Truth. Yeah, I think the reason, I don't think the man really wants to be president anymore. I mean, he never really did, I don't think, because he's never taken it seriously. I mean, it's evident. And then I think that what we're seeing here is the death throes of somebody who does not want to go to prison.
I don't know. It's so difficult, because I really don't like our two-party system, and I agree that Biden is not the best. But I also know that there is no perfect president, and
neither was Clinton, and neither was Obama. None of them really did anything tremendous, great, admirable for Indian country. Every time I see, they always, the Democrats always want Indian country to come and vote for them. And it's the lesser of two evils, but nothing ever happens.
I wouldn't say that though, Roy, because, when you live here in DC and you're actually interacting with things on a kind of in a real-time basis, you do see the things that are happening because your friends are in career.
Well, that's all fine and dandy, but if it doesn't reach us, out here, it doesn't mean shit, because it's got to get to us. It's got to get to the people. It's got to get to the tribes. It's got to get to the tribes that are trying to be recognized by the federal government. It's got to be here to help us to continue enforcing the laws that are already in place that aren't being enforced. I hear them, yeah, we're working, we're doing things, but it never reaches the people. And that's my concern, is I've never seen anything. What's that?
Is that our tribal government's job to make sure they understand what's happening, to make sure their people understand what's happening in DC, or is it DC's job to come and make sure? we understand that.
Well, it's DC's job to make sure that legislation actually reaches the people, that actually reaches the tribes.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. The tribal governments do have their part in it. However, if you can't blame one or the other, you have to put equal blame on both and say, hey,
not a blame, but I think, what is the position that the federal government should be in our lives? I mean, would we much rather make sure that our tribal governments are effective and have the capacity they need? And so that's where we want to see things that are effective and well done. And that's our tribal government's job, to go to DC and lobby for whatever it is that they need, so they can.
And therein lies the problems,
Yeah.
the lobby powers problems, where, he who has the money.
Indian lobbyists, and
What's that?
Some really rich Indian lobbyists.
Well, yeah, and that's the problem with lobbyists in government is the money goes through the lobbyists and then it reaches the government, and then the legislation never hits Indian country. I see legislation hitting wealthy corporations that need tax breaks, that need, regulations loosened. But I don't see things happening for Indian country when supposedly we have lobbyists up there too. What are they lobbying for? What are they getting done?
Particular, what certain tribes need, certain land acquisitions, land put in a trust.
Well, then they jump in bed with people like the Abramoffs and, that kind of stuff. So it's a broken system, period, end of story. This lobby system and this two-party system is a broken system, and it's going to be hell for Indian country to get anywhere when that system is broken for its own country. How are individual sovereign nations expected to make any headway when the system that is supposed to be allowing Indian country and different tribes to do its own thing,
All right, when are we going to bring on our guest?
Oh, well, before we continue to get deeper and deeper into our rabbit holes here, why don't you do that? Why don't you introduce and bring on our new guest?
Well, I hope everyone's ready for it. It's not a great transition. That's why I brought out the sage. Clean it all off. We have a great guest tonight, Dallin Maybee, who is
I thought he was coming on.
What?
I thought he was coming on.
He is coming on.
You said maybe.
So his last name is Maybee. Maybe.
Oh, come on. I've been waiting all day for that one.
Who's on first? What's on second? So Dallin Maybee, he's Northern Arapaho.
I thought you said he was.
Seneca. And he's an artist. He's a philosopher. He's a law graduate. He's got a
cool dude. And he's big.
It's about as tall as his body. He's about a 7 foot tall Indian. I don't know if you all have any experience with 7 feet tall Indians, but you're about to meet one right now. So let's bring on Roy. Bring him up. On.
There's Dallin. Not maybe, but Dallin for sure. Oh, he's muted. He's muted. He's muted himself. There we go. Hey, what's happening, Dallin?
Not too much, man. Excited to be here.
Sorry for the fucked up introduction there. I hope that was okay.
No, I think sometimes no transition is better than a transition.
Absolutely. There we go.
Right in, rip that Band-Aid right off. Get to it.
Tear it off. Don't pull it slow.
That's right.
So I don't know when I first met you. And because I did work with the Seneca Nation for a while, and I think I just met you at repatriation stuff, right?
I think so.
Stuff.
Might have been a Fed bar, maybe. I don't know.
Fed bar. So Dallin and I have the legal, connection. But he's much smarter than that, because he also knows how to be creative and has a sense of humor, unlike me. So
we're working on it.
Really happy that you're here, and want to hear about about your story and kind of where you come from, and want to share a little bit of your introduction and who you are?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dallin. I am Seneca on my dad's side, Northern Arapaho on my mom's side. Enrolled Arapaho. Senecas have a matriarchal enrollment system, so your mother has to be Seneca. And maybe we can get into that a little bit, because I'm technically more Seneca than I am Arapaho, but thank God the Arapahos have a rather liberal enrollment system where either side can actually be Arapaho and you're good. But I am quarter Mexican also on my mom's side. I don't want to leave that out at all.
Oh, yeah.
I was raised in Western New York, home of the Seneca Nation of Indians. We're very much still in tune with our culture, our language. We have our ceremonies. We have Longhouse religion as well. And I was really glad to grow up there because it's just beautiful. It's a lot like your backdrop, a lot of water, a lot of trees, all that good stuff. The reservation was like a lot of reservations. You know, it had its issues, its politics. I actually grew up in a pretty politically volatile area. Like there was tribal issues happening. You know, people would take over the government offices, and there were shootouts, and with all this shit we had going on with the state of New York and taxation issues and the thruway running through. So I kind of grew up in an area where there was a lot of political activism. You know, we would shut down the thruway and there'd be burning cars and tires and stuff.
Yep. On the thruway.
Yeah. And I just kind of thought that's how all Indian country was. One of my first memories was at my grandma's house. She was kind of on an intersection of a pretty thorough way of throughway of the res, and the state trooper, you know, came and posted up kind of on the corner, and we rarely saw cops on the res as it was, so that kind of took us by surprise. And next thing I know, all these people were like coming out of the woods. Like I didn't even know there was that many people around, but apparently one of the warrior societies at the time had set up a little checkpoint. So they were like throwing rocks and beating on this guy's car with sticks. And so I was like, I guess we're throwing rocks at the cops today. And that was my first real
thing to do. The
I was
thing
like,
to do.
yeah, this is some good stuff. So that was the environment. And then as I got older, you see all number of ways that tribes can participate quickly. But that little segue was part of the reason why I went to law school. You know, I went to school later in life. I by no means had it figured out when I was 20, 19. Struggled in undergraduate school right out of the gate, got kicked out of school, went back, finally, you know, graduated undergrad, knew I was going to need more than just an undergrad degree. So I just kept going, did some master's work at UCLA, and then quit messing around there and got right to law school. But I was an older student for sure. I think I went back to undergrad when I was maybe 29, 30-ish. So, you know, I got to do a lot of different things in the meantime. I was a cop for a few years, went through BIA's basic police academy, and then decided to go back to school. But I also toured with American Indian Dance Theater quite a bit.
Yeah.
And other smaller dance performing arts groups. So I got to see a lot of the world. Felt like it gave me a big global perspective on just how amazing there are. You know, there are communities out there that are very similar to ours, and they're just, you know, they have their own things. It was pretty awesome to see and be exposed to, because it definitely changed how I thought about, you know, our place and our relationship with America. You know, it definitely propelled me into some other stuff, especially with my art, especially with law school. And here I am. That's kind of the short and I was gonna say short and curly. I meant to say
That's okay. That's okay.
Dirty is what I wanted to say.
We don't have any standards here. This isn't a family show.
You know, I never said I was that bright. I just Sorry about that. So
That was the cliff notes.
quick and dirty
cliff
version. That's what we want to leave people with. Wind River's right, Lance. Yes.
Yes.
And hey, Tyra, nice to see you on here.
Yeah, you got some friends in the chat room.
Yeah.
Technically, Tyra's my girlfriend, so she has to be here.
Oh, gotcha. Technically. Let's hear about that then.
And we want to hear. So, guess who's going to be our guest next week? So, Tyro can be our guest next week and say what happened after.
There's the version, as I recall, and the version that Tyro will give you.
Yes.
Leading to this moment.
That's what I want to hear. That's what I really want to hear.
Yeah.
So, man, Seneca Nation, man, there's some. I remember I was living in Syracuse, and I would our house was in Syracuse, and I would go out and lived in Olean.
Oh yeah.
So I was in the Allegheny offices, and loved it down there. And then I'd go home on the weekends. So when council was meeting on Saturdays, I was just like, man, everybody just behave themselves so I can get home to my 3-year-old, right? That's where my brain was when I was working at Seneca. And it never happened. People are throwing things. You think someone's going to brandish a gun any second, man. People are mad. People are calling each other names. It was a trip.
Yeah. Well, we were definitely not a huge tribe, but we were warriors. We were pretty dominant.
Yeah.
We held shit together for a long, long time.
Yeah, and I worked a lot with the Haudenosaunee, with the traditional nations, 6 nations as well, and so I learned sovereignty from the best. I really think y'all are the
Big 6.
Yeah, y'all know what sovereignty really is in Indian country. So I've always appreciated my time out there.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Hopefully we were good hosts. We could talk all day about our relationship with the British and the French and the US from first contact. A lot of people discount Eastern tribes, not realizing we've had to deal with that BS for several hundred years, not just 150 years.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of where we are and have accomplished despite that sort of long endeavor. Right?
Yeah. Well, I really want to get into some of this artwork of yours, Dallin.
Let me give you some background. I always, it was funny because I never really considered myself an artist. I just thought, oh, everybody can do art. It's just for whatever reason people don't, right?
Yeah.
And so I had a hard time calling myself an artist, especially in high school and into college and stuff. But I always loved doing it. But the real reason I sort of got into stuff was because I wanted to create my own outfits. So I got into beadwork. I learned how to sew. My mom's a good seamstress and can sew the hell out of everything. She can make her own patterns and do all kinds of good stuff. So she helped out a lot. I had to learn how to do the feather work. But there was like a little community building, and they were offering powwow classes. We have our own separate longhouse stuff, our own social dances and things. But I didn't do a whole lot of that growing up. It wasn't until later that I really sort of started to embrace that. But the powwow always fascinated me because I knew I was also Northern Arapaho on my mom's side. We were a classic plains culture. I just thought, well, shit, man, I'm not, participating. We weren't going home as often as we could. So I thought powwow was the way that I could connect with that side. But I didn't have a whole lot of beadworkers on my dad's side. So it was a lot of trial and error and just kind of trying to figure it out. And so after a number of years went by, I started to draw more and just kind of get into all kinds of stuff. But it was my younger brother. He's a good 11 years younger than I am. But one day, and I had done some beadwork and we, beaded rattles and things. And he's like, hey, you got to check out this Indian market. And I was like, what the F is an Indian market? He's like, well, you make stuff and you sell it to people. And it's like, people buy this stuff? Like, it's like a show? And he's like, yeah, it's like a friggin' show. So I went out there, and of course I go to Santa Fe Indian Market as my first Indian art show. And I was blown away, right? Indian Market is almost 100 years old. They know what they're doing. And I was the level of artwork, the creativity, all the different art forms, it just blew my mind, and I knew I wanted to be a part of it. So somehow this Res kid making powwow outfits segued into some kind of artist at Indian Market, and I've been doing that 20 years. Yeah.
Damn.
That's awesome.
Well, here I'm gonna show a couple of things, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. Is it up?
What part of the powwow does that belong to?
That's the contemporary ledger art. You can see that stuff on people's outfits, especially now. It seems like the last 30 years have seen a real resurgence in ledger art. So there's more contemporary ledger artists than I think there ever has been. And actually, one of my earliest art pieces was a ledger art piece that I had done when I was probably 12. I had these books, and I was like, oh, I love this sort of narrative pictorial style, and horses and buffalo hunts and ceremonies and war scenes. And so without even realizing there was this whole genre of art called contemporary ledger art, I found some antique paper and I drew my first piece. And
can you explain to those of us who don't understand what ledger art is, where it came from, what it's about?
So it's a pictorial narrative style, right? It's been around for thousands of years, as long as people have been painting on hides or teepee covers, shield covers, things like that. People have been telling the story of their life. It's a historical narrative about them or about their tribe or about a certain story. But more often than not, it was very personal. So you'd see, visions interpreted on shield covers. You'd see, historical accounts of battle scenes that they were in, or hunting scenes, or ceremony. And during the Indian Wars, a lot of these plains warrior artists were prisoners of war, locked up at Fort Marion or different other places, Apache warriors. But there was still this tourist interest in art. And so they would give them paper, usually ledger paper, the lined ledger paper, crayons, pencils, and they would continue to create that art form. And it became known as ledger art, even though it predates that term for.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's, a handful of contemporary ledger artists who, when I got into the game, some of the big names were George Flett and Terrence Gardepee. Now there's, just this wall of ledger artists who are creating some phenomenal pieces. But we'll find the antique papers wherever you can, and hopefully tell your own story. There are a few artists out there who are telling stories that probably aren't their own. So I don't know that I consider them ledger artists.
True ledger artists.
They're still artists, right? But that piece, that Trump piece. So I was in New York for the opening of a ledger art exhibit at NMAI at the NMAI New York down in Lower Manhattan, and me and my other buddy, Chris Capan, he's a phenomenal ledger artist. We were wandering around. I was like, "Hey, man, let's go check out this oddity store. It's here in Manhattan." So we went, and he's like, "Dude, check this out." And they had all the regular. I'm into kind of some macabre collecting and some sort of a recovering goth, but. He shows me this drawer, and it's got this insane asylum paper from the turn of the century. And right on the top, State Hospital for the Insane or whatever. It's like, oh, this would be such a cool piece. So I hung on to that paper for 5 years, and I never. So they're discharge names of female people who were there at that institute. So, I was always conflicted. I was like, well, these women were there probably not by choice. Back then they were putting women into the insane asylum if they were too emotional, or they had or they were you know, they'd go take the staycation at the state hospital, and God knows what happened to them.
That's how they handled menopause back then.
Right. And I like my girls a little crazy, right? I would have never put them in
We all do.
But I found this great paper, and I was conflicted because I was like, man, how do I, create a piece when there's just such a terrible history on these pages? But luckily they're discharged. So that I was like, well, that means they got out. So there's a little bit of silver lining. But it wasn't until this friggin' presidency that I was like, we're here because a variety of reasons, right? Underlying racism, there's disenfranchisement, there's apathy. And so this piece is titled Power of Your Vote, right? And I thought how critical it is to have a president that can just tell the truth, can look at the issues of America and say, how can we come together to get through this? And this president is the exact opposite of that. How can I enrich myself, my family, my friends? How can I get this attention that I've sought my entire life? So I thought the Hannibal Lecter spit mask was appropriate. I thought the straight over his presidential suit was appropriate. But again, it's, if we want to get back to some sort of normal, we've got to get this freaking guy out. He is no friend of the Indians, and his administration has demonstrated that from before he took office. And here we are, and it's just shocking. So this piece, I actually took it to a California art show, and I wondered how it'd be received. And for the most part, it was really well received. California's pretty liberal, but I got a few people walking by, and hey, that's not right. You got to respect the office. It's like, hey, if he respected the office, we wouldn't be having a picture like this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the only time I've ever had a real critique of ledger art was I picked up a Bible page from like the 1570 Bible, some Gutenberg Bible or something, one of the initial prints of the King James version of the Bible. And I drew a picture of Jesus healing the withered hand on the Sabbath. But it was an Indian chief, and I think hands are very representative of industry and work ethic. And
yeah.
I remember one lady walked by, and she's like, I don't think Jesus would want you drawing on his Bible. I was like, man, I don't even think Jesus had anything to do with this particular Bible. So, I don't think he minds at all. I think he loves it.
He didn't care. I know him. He didn't care.
Yeah, he don't care. He don't care about my commentary. Yeah, it was pretty funny. But that's ledger art in a nutshell. And I do a ton of ledger art. I do more stuff like this, contemporary bison robes with ledger art.
Nice. Very nice.
I incorporated the light in there as an effect, as an element. But this piece is my own personal narrative. There's a Sundance scene. I was at Standing Rock a couple times, the No Dapple protests. There's a powwow scene. There's some elements in there that really talk about, how I perceive the world and my place in the world. There's saw an astronaut shooting up into space. He was the first Indian to get closest to where we've come from without having to die first, right? It was amazing to see that in my lifetime.
Yeah.
There's a woman and a male figure holding up two medallions that are beaded in the center, that center strip. Just because I think our roles, as we're taught according to our traditions, are foundational pillars of who we are and who we can be and who we need to be for our people. We've got plenty of examples historically of powerful people, powerful leaders, men and women. And that's just to be mindful that it's on their shoulders. It's on the shoulders of the man there on the left, and then the woman kneeling, holding the baby. It's on those shoulders that we've got to try and be who we are. But there's a parade scene in the middle there, and I put that backlight because I think light represents hope and positivity for the future, and so I want that to be the focal point. I think despite all the issues that we have, we've got some bright days ahead of us, especially for our children. So they're going to have their own issues, but.
Oh, here we go. This is my favorite.
This is my Sasquatch piece. Yeah.
All right, don't flip into it. Let's talk about the Sasquatch piece now.
All right. Well, I got some other friends. Celinda is one of my oldest friends. Knew her in college. Hello. And probably the oldest friend, Liz, is she grew up with me in New York. We went to high school together.
Cool.
She's a phenomenal poet. You'll have to check out her stuff. So this Sasquatch piece, it's actually the second one. I had done a simpler one without the Sasquatch hair, just kind of an experiment. And unfortunately, I didn't hang on to it very long. It sold at Indian Market right after I'd finished. So I said, man, I really need one for myself because it was such a cool piece. It's actually big. The beadwork from top to bottom is probably 9.5 inches.
Whoa.
7 inches wide. It's a massive piece. But I'm a Sasquatch enthusiast. I'll advocate for Sasquatch as long as I have breath in me. We've got too many stories about our relationship with them. Everybody knows what kind of hair that is. I'm like, well, it's Sasquatch hair. I only use the finest Sasquatch hair.
And did Sasquatch just give that to you, or did you have to cut it off of him? Did you find it?
No, we've got a great relationship. I was just like, hey man, I'm creating this piece. I could use a collaboration on it.
So he just took his brush and said, hey, here you go, brother. There's some right here.
Exactly. I think
his
that
squatchy brush.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, that's really cool. Then another one that I like, let's see if I can find it here.
It's kind of got the opposite of what I got going on here.
This is some of
the jewelry I do, one of the oil paintings. Yeah, this is my Instagram page.
Oh, nice.
Thunderbeef 4, for those who are wondering. You will.
Yeah. So go to Dallin's Instagram. You'll see all of these pictures. This one is actually from SWIA too. It's swia.org as one of the exhibitors. And this is are you looking at this? This is the Sasquatch helmet, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's got some Japanese influences. I put our split horn elements in there because that was always a symbol of status, of authority. But I'm a big fan of the warrior cultures, and so I've got that. I started with that mask, that menpo. It's actually back here. So it's the first part of a new Sasquatch outfit that I'm working on.
Oh,
cool.
And I'm a Northern traditional dancer at heart. But this one, I won't have a bustle. It won't, no shield. It'll be very organic. I might remove some of the Japanese elements, so it definitely looks a little more squatchy, right?
Get a little squatchy look there.
Yeah.
Can never go wrong going a little more squatchy.
So let's talk about some of these squatchy stories.
I'm waiting.
Yes. So both tribes have more the Arapaho side, but there's stories about people who have seen this fella and recognize his power. And I think some of the stories in the Pacific Northwest are a little more, recent and up to date and stuff. But my cousin has talked about seeing this guy down by the river. But I've always been fascinated because, like you said, I'm huge. I'm 6'7". I'm not quite 7 foot, but I'm 6'7".
I'm gonna call it 7. This just might as well.
I can't see anything higher than that anyway, so it's like that may as well be 7 foot.
I always thought I was normal size. It wasn't until I was like looking in a mirror that I was like, oh my God, I am way bigger than this guy. But I'm about 350. I'm trying to drop some weight. I'm trying to get down to a svelte 280. That was when I was dancing and touring a lot, I was probably about 275. It was pretty lean. It's hard to move this much mass around, so I got to do it for health reasons. And
yes, sir, you do.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
But anyway, so I was one of the best stories that I have. I was in Northern California at Fort Bidwell. I was AD at Arapaho, right? And they've got a lot of stories up there. And I was asking some of the local, my buddies, I was like, hey, man, tell me some of these squash stories that you have. He's like, oh. I was like, what are the more recent ones? He's like, oh, I got one for you. He's like, so there was a girl up there, tribal member. It was probably in the 30s or 40s, but they said that they had different encampments, right? In the early 1900s, they'd go one place for winter or one place for summer, just depending on where berries were. But anyway, but they said this one family lived in a little house kind of at the base of the mountains, and they had a little girl who had Down syndrome, incidentally. And when she was about 5, she disappeared for an afternoon. And they're freaking out. They thought she had gotten lost in the mountains. They were scouring the woods, all this thick timber. And she reappeared. She was fine. But then a few weeks later, it happened again. And it got to be more frequent. And as she got older and she could start to express herself a little more clearly, she was like, oh, I'm just with my friends. Spent the afternoon in the mountains. Friends, they don't have anybody live out there. It's like, oh yeah, they're the one. They're all covered in hair. And so I was just like blown away by that story, right? So I wrote I've been writing children's books. I won Best of Show at Indian Market in 2007 for a couple of children's books that I had written, original stories, beaded the covers, illustrated them on antique ledger paper in a ledger art style. They were relationship stories. One was about a little boy and his father. The other one was about this little girl and her mother. And so I'd written another book, and then this one I decided to do because I got a commission for a children's book. And I was like, oh, this will be a totally appropriate story. So I adapted that story, and I'll kind of give you the quick and dirty version of the children's book. But it's about this little girl. She lives near the mountains, and one day she's wandering in the woods, and she has a little doll that her mom had made her, right? She takes this doll everywhere. They have tea parties. They play down by the water. And one day she feels like somebody's watching her, and so she kind of pays attention. But she decides to leave her doll at the tea party she had set up, and she goes home for the day. Comes back the next day, and there's a little hairy doll seated next to her doll. And so she's like, come on out, let's have a tea party. So she makes this new friend, and it's a little girl with twigs woven into her hair and flowers, and she's covered in hair, and she's about her age. They have tea parties all summer long. They wander, they play with the toads and the deers, and as the summer comes to an end, one day she senses that her friend is really sad, and she's like, what's the matter? And they communicate in the way that little girls communicate, and hugs and happiness and giggles. But it wasn't like that day. So she got the sense that her friend was going to leave, and so she was sad, and they gave each other a hug, and then they exchanged dolls. She goes home that night, and she's just upset, and her mom asks her, what's the matter? She's like, Mom, I'm never going to see my best friend. And she's like, oh, you'll see her again. And she's like, oh, but how do you know? And her mom pulls a little hairy doll out of her own apron. Such a cool, I just think that's the coolest story. So the cover, if you can pull up that piece, it's the pink cover with a little Sasquatch girl and a little girl in a pioneer dress holding hands. But there's 2 little tiny dolls that attach to the cover that you can actually untie and play with. I just thought if I ever get that published, I need to have some kind of little doll that they can take off and play with as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not finding it. Oh, wait. Yes, I am. There it is.
Okay.
Let me pull it up here. Is this it?
That's the one.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a cute story.
Very cool.
All right, looks like I got to keep it a little more PG. My mom just joined us.
Hey, Mom.
That's when everything changes, when Ma shows up.
Yeah.
Hi, Ma. Now I just puckered up now too.
Uh-oh.
It's like, oh, there's a mom in the room here.
Hey, what about me? I'm a
Not
mom.
that Shannon's like not some old mom too, you know.
She's not like a regular mom. She's a cool mom.
Thank you. Well, wait a
With a
minute.
cute top on.
Yeah, so that's my squatch, my favorite squatch stories for sure. I've taken my girls squatching. Well, I've got 2 girls who are now 10 and 7, and a son who's 20. But every once in a while, on some of these long art drives, we'll pop into the woods and I'll have them do their best Sasquatch yell. It's really cute.
Nice.
Good stuff. I remember one
Squatching.
time I thought we had hiked out pretty far into the back. There was no other cars in the parking lot. We're out there yelling around, and out of nowhere, this woman and a dog comes crawling down the trail. It's like, oh, probably thinks we're a bunch of weirdos out here yelling. Yeah, it was funny.
Good times.
Yeah, there's Squatch stories in Oklahoma as well, and there was always weird things going on in Oklahoma, though, in the woods and the dirt roads, and so you kind of took everything or I did growing up. You took kind of everything with a grain of salt, but when I grew up, and I used to wander all over the place, walking and running, and man, you'd go to places, and there'd be something there watching you, and so I was always like,
Deer woman. That's deer woman right there.
right, something's out here.
I might do a deer woman piece because that story fascinates me. Tyra's told me about some deer woman stories. She told me about some Sasquatch stories.
Yeah, deer woman. That they scared the shit out of you with those stories.
You know what though? Speaking of just always being mindful of things around, I must have been about 13, but my buddy and I, we decided that we've got a creek that runs down through the reservation and empties out at the lake. And we were like, hey, we should float down the creek, just spend a couple hours. Well, it's probably only about 8 miles from my house to his house on the creek, and but it's a long ass 8 miles, right? It took us probably 10 hours to do it. And there's a few access roads, but of course, after 3 hours, my parents thought for sure we were floating around
down.
So they were like dredging the creek, hiking around. I remember seeing his mom, and she was freaking out. But our jeans were all wet to the waist, and we were like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Oh my God, you guys, I'm gonna kill you." Part of it was because we had decided to duct tape our flip flops to our feet because we didn't have water shoes, so we taped them up, and we're like, this should work. And after about 30 seconds in the water, they were gone.
Yeah.
Barefoot walking in the creek and around the creek. But I tell you what, one time we were somewhere in the middle, and we saw that the creek had done one of these big curves, right? So we thought, oh, we'll go overland and just bushwhack so we can cut off 300 yards. And we were deep in the woods, man. And we came across this little pond, and there was all these little footprints, like all over the place around this pond. And I was like, who the F is letting little kids come swim back here? Because this isn't the best of water either, right? There's like a huge ass creek right there.
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy's like, wait a second. Because we have stories about little people, right?
Yeah.
And then we got it at the same time. We look at each other, and I was like, I don't got anything to leave these guys. Do you? And he's like, no, let's get out of here. So we hightailed it out of there. But I'll never forget that little, it was probably only about 20 feet across, just a little tiny pond or something, but just all these little, maybe 5-6 inch footprints all over the place over there. Not any adult footprints, just little tiny bare ass feet.
Oh, wow.
Like in the mud. Yeah, it was crazy. So we took off, and we talk about it still every once in a while. But that was something that I saw with my own eyes.
Yeah, I love those kind of stories. Those growing up stories you never really had an answer to, but still freak you out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What kind of freaks me out about you too, Dallin, is why you ended up in law school.
What's that?
Why you ended up in law school,
You know,
and
I,
and how has that kind of changed how you think about the world now with the things that you do?
Yeah, are you as jaded as Shannon?
probably more so, right? Part of it was seeing it was legal advocates who really helped us out of a lot of tight spots at Seneca Nation.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and I didn't understand it at the time, but I recognized the impact. I didn't know what that meant, but I was like, holy shit, these are people that get stuff done, right? Working in a system that is foreign to us, foreign to me. I don't get it. I don't think I'm smart enough to do it, right? But and then I saw NARF, like NARF somehow ended up in all this stuff, and I was like, holy cow, there are people out there who are making real changes in Indian country, and really started to think about what kind of advanced degree, because I ended up in school not because I thought I needed to go to college. My mom was like the first one of the first ones in our family, our extended family, to even go through to college. And what's funny is nobody told me how to, like, the process to go to college.
Right.
I thought I could only apply to one school. And my mom was like, I was going to go into the military as a career. I thought, this is what I want to do. This is respectable, right? And I took the ASVAB, and I did pretty well on that. But she was like, well, you can do that, but just apply to school. And if you get in, then seriously consider it. And I applied to one school that was a school my mom went to. They have a good scholarship program for minorities. And so miraculously, because I wasn't the best student, I literally missed the exact number of days you could miss before you could. And to my mom's credit, she would just be like, as long as you're getting good grades, you know, she had bigger things to worry about with my older brother, right? She was
a bigger fish to fry. All right.
Yeah,
Lucky you.
He was the role model, good and bad, right? So,
see, I played blocker for my brother too. So everybody's worried about me. He got to slide under the radar.
Yeah, I learned a lot about what I could and should and wouldn't do. But so nobody told me I could apply to more than one school. I got in, and then that changed everything. But like I said, I didn't do very well initially. Got kicked out. Took what I thought would be a 1-year break, but it stretched out to longer. And I ended up at Utah Valley because I thought I would go back to this. It was BYU that I started out at. It was not a good fit for me. Thought I would go back, but I had written some paper on nuclear storage facilities and tribal trust land. Because it was a big issue at the time in the state of Utah. The Skull Valley Band of Goshoots wanted to put a temporary nuclear storage facility until the big one in Nevada was built. And the state of Utah created this, political moat around the reservation, created legislation to prevent spent nuclear rods from being transported by truck, by train, by plane, any way to get that fuel rods away from the state of Utah, despite the fact that the Skull Valley Band's reservation is right in the midst of like 9 different really shitty. There's low level nuclear storage out there, waste disposal. There's a Army depot that destroys nerve gas and all this other bullshit. It's just like the worst surrounding this reservation. There's a handful of people that live in the community out there, but most of them live in a small town just off of it. But it's beautiful. There's Dugway proving grounds out there where they're literally firing artillery and munition shells out into the desert. So when you talk about a tribe having few options for true economic development, Well, that was the rub. I'm opposed to the spent fuel rods being stored in Indian country, but for that tribe, that was a viable option because they just didn't have, nobody was going to go put a manufacturing plant out there. Nobody was going to build a water bottling plant out there.
Yeah.
You know, resources, it's kind of high desert. There's not a whole lot out there. There's not timber, not enough timber anyway, not enough water for them to take advantage of that. So that was the dilemma that I explored in that paper. And anyway, so the university, Utah Valley University, was like, hey, we heard you're trying to transfer to the University of Utah. We'll give you some money if you stay here. And I was like, well, I don't know that you really have anything I want. Well, we'll just look at our degree program. You're going to go to grad school, right? I was like, yeah. Like, yeah, you can get your degree in anything. So I got it in philosophy, not because I think I'm some deep thinker. It was literally the program that had the least amount of credits I needed to get done. So
Wow, that's a totally different story. I totally think different about you, Dal.
I know, I'm a slacker. I am so
Yeah.
sorry. The star shines less brightly for Shannon, right? I would write these papers on, comparative Western philosophy with native religions and theology, and the poor professors never knew what hit them, man. They couldn't analyze that. They had no context, right? So I would get these decent grades, and I managed to graduate just because I knew I was going to move on to some other stuff. But yeah, that's how I ended up. I had deferred law school because I wanted to try and get into UCLA's law program. So Carol Goldberg was out there, and she wasn't the dean at the time, but she was on that tenure track, and she had a lot of influence on who gets into that program. So because of American Indian Dance Theater, our director was also at UCLA as a tenured professor in the theater program. So I literally sort of created this native theater study track coupled with federal Indian law. And after a year, I got an A- in Carol's class, but when I talked to her about, transferring over, she's like, oh, go do a year at ASU, and if you do well enough, then you can transfer over. And I was like, what? F that. If I go there, I'm staying there, man. I don't need your effing law program, right? So, and I loved ASU. ASU has one of the best Indian law programs that I could have hoped for. I had done a tour of the campus with another buddy of mine who went to law school there. And it was funny because we were powwowing around all summer. And he has this VW diesel bug, right? This big burly Canadian guy. And we were cruising around, and people see our hair fucking flowing in the wind, and guys would go by really rubbernecking, and they'd see these two big burly dudes. And I used to give him such hell. I was like, dude, this is so embarrassing, man. What a goddamn bug. And he's like, but it's diesel, bro. It's like, somehow makes it all better, right? It was
Only if it's biodiesel. Only if it's biodiesel.
If we could have been so lucky, we should put it on monster tires or something, right?
There you go.
Anyway, so I saw ASU's campus, and I really enjoyed it, and so that was one of the schools I applied to. So I quit messing around with the master's program, and man, even what's funny, talk about trying to support academic endeavors. My director for American Indian Dance Theater all year, hey, you need to quit thinking about this law program. You can have a nice career in the native performing arts. Just, you can direct some films, maybe direct some theater projects. And I was like, I don't know, man. I think law school's the way. He's like, I don't know if you're smart enough for law school. And I was like, well, goddamn, man, I'm going to see if I can do this. And, just to be totally honest, it was hard. That first year is kind of the weeding out year to see how committed you are. And I struggled. I passed, but I struggled. And very few people know this story. But the administration came to me, and I'm only telling this because I want people to know that struggle is real. But if I can do it, then my God, you can too, because I am, like I said, I'm not that bright, right? So the administration comes to me, and they're like, hey, Dallin, So you passed, but we really worry about how you'll do your second and third years. So we want you to repeat your first year of law school. And I was shocked. I was like, no, I can do this. I think I can do this. Like, yeah, you probably can, but we don't want you to incur more debt for nothing. Because we had seen a few students wash out every year. Probably every Indian legal program sees a couple students not see it through. And so I had to do some soul searching. And at some point, I just felt like, man above, creator had put me on this path that took me to law school and got me here. And who was I to say that I should deny that and go in a different direction? So I did it. I repeated my first year. I did well. Second and third years, I did even better. But part of it was learning how to think like that, in that system, and regurgitate the information as they wanted it. And here we are. So
it's called learning to be an asshole.
They taught you well.
It is. I mean, it is. I mean, people get divorced. I mean, your family all of a sudden hates you because you're in law school and you're picking apart every single thing and trying to make a persuasive argument out of, what kind of gravy this is. I mean, it's just like law school doesn't necessarily turn you into a nice person. So you got to, I know for me, I had to it took me about 5 years to come back into myself, because it really pulled something out of me that I wanted to put back. I don't know if you had that experience, but
I did. And it was always kind of this, like most Indians, you hang around with other Indians because they think like you're comfortable there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're all trying to figure out the system. I don't know that it pulled something out of you, Shannon, as much as it put something in you that was foreign to you.
Yeah.
That frame of thinking, of analyzing logic and putting forward, it just sucks.
So there you go, putting more foreign stuff in you, Shannon.
Yeah, let me tell you about the boyfriend I had once. No, okay.
So, I don't know, but whatever reason, here we are, Shannon, and I think we're all doing good work. I love the work that NARF does. I kind of ended up there in a roundabout way, but I'm because I think they really are making some differences. And much to your point earlier, some of those differences can be very intangible. You don't often notice it in your everyday life, but believe me, the implications are real, especially with things like McGirt happening now. Holy shit, that's the best legal decision we've seen in 30 years, And what's better is it'll set precedents for how courts look at treaty rights, how they look at Indian country defined in terms of jurisdiction, and how it applies to just the assertion of sovereignty.
Now, is that what happened in Oklahoma just recently?
Yeah. And
McGirt is what it's called.
What was discerning, though, Shannon, was how quickly those tribes came out with a statement saying, "Oh, 2 days ago, we had the biggest legal decision in Indian country.
We're going to give it up.
It's our sovereignty to the state of Oklahoma." Do an analysis, see what the implications are for not just criminal, but taxation.
Ridiculous.
Land rights, water rights. You got this oil industry who's just pissing on Indian sovereignty. At least take a second to say, hey, we are going to spend 2 weeks to really analyze this decision and what it means for us and how it can best the tribe. But no, they didn't do that.
But do you think that was predetermined?
I don't know. Well, yes and no. The oil lobby has been, putting the screws to the state of Oklahoma for a long time. And despite a governor who has some descendancy, he has shown himself to be no friend to Indians.
Right.
And he's eroding sovereignty there, and he's trying to assert state rights over tribes, and it's horrifying. But again, that oil lobby is extensive.
Yep. And deep pocketed too.
Deep pockets, man. They've got attorneys, 10 sheets to the wind and just as deep, ready to take on Indian country. And
that's the problem with the system right now is this money has got to come out of politics.
yes,
Until you get money out of politics, you are not going to have anything for the people.
well, and that's just it. Like, you know, how does a marginalized community who doesn't have an electoral voice all of a sudden assert any sort of other voice in the absence of money? It's only because some of those tribes, like the Chickasaws, employ, I don't know, 60,000 people. They're the second largest employer behind the state. They've got real money behind the brawn, you know, and they can finally afford some really high power attorneys. And that's the beauty of NARF, is we take on a lot of clients who just can't afford that level of legal advocacy. And we've had some huge victories. And we'll stick with that damn case, even if it endures decades, because if it impacts one tribe, it's going to impact all tribes. And so we've got to see it through, and we've got to try and anticipate those maneuvers so we can have the best possible outcome. But crazy.
Yep. Well, Oklahoma is an odd place, and the tribes really are part of the machine there, part of the state governmental machine, and I don't think they understand what sovereignty is. They really don't.
Well, they think that what they have is sovereignty.
Right. No,
Partnership.
they're just puppets of the. I mean, I hate to say that. Not everyone is, but I think some are trying to come out of that era. But most of them, I know my nation, I really feel strongly that they're still in that era, and they don't know how to assert their sovereignty like they should be.
Absolutely. Well, and it's an offshoot of that patriarchy that's been around a long time. Hey, we'll provide you the model for leadership, for tribal government, for laws, for how, you know, they were defining the sovereignty for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's kind of like getting a soup with only 4 of the 10 ingredients. You know, you don't know what you're missing until you realize there's another 6 ingredients that can be added to this soup, so it's fucking stellar, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But, so I think some tribes are really figuring it out, and some of them have the clout to really make some big headways. But again, it's just tribes getting together. I think some of these regional associations of tribes and coalitions of tribes are helpful because, you know, they can all shore each other up. They can strategize. They can come together. You've got some pretty funny comments from April about government. And incidentally, she was with American Indian Dance Theater and my former director, Hane, a little before my time. But you know what? When I started dancing, we would put on those that first PBS American Indian Dance Theater tape, and we would listen to those songs and practice in the gym or outside on the lawn and just try and do what we were seeing. That's how I got into powwow.
Wow.
That's cool.
Powwow, I credit powwow with really putting me on some good paths to seeing a lot of incredible stuff, for sure.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, April is from Cal State Long Beach, out that way, and so that I know April from my time.
I'm sure I run into April a few times then too.
Yeah.
Hey, April, homegirl.
So, all right, back to your art. Like, can you show that that mask? Would you show that mask?
Sneak peek, huh?
If that's not too much to ask.
Now we'll see if we can get it. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
I was seeing a lot of like, you know, calls for shows, how people are interpreting this weird pandemic that we're in, right? And so I thought, well, what can I do? I want to create this ensemble, an outfit that talks about some of the most impactful things similar to the pandemic. I'm beating this gas mask, right? And I don't know if you can see it on there, but I've got different viral and bacterial representations. So there's smallpox, there's the COVID virus, there's Black Plague, and they're all on these DNA sort of strand vine thingies, but it's in this cool, they're all 13 cut beads. It's this cool dusty pink that I've been saving for a long time. But it'll be part of a whole ensemble. It should be pretty horrifying and intriguing at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I love that. That is so, and that's the kind of, you know, when I think of you, you have, I don't know what to call it, an abnormal creativity. A
Well, that's
unique,
art, Shannon. It's
Abnormal is
art.
my middle name.
Every artist has their thing, you know.
it's not just, but let's talk about Indian art, you know, and we had this conversation. We had a poet on, and we were talking about what it means to be, you know, an Indian doing poetry, and like, or an Indian doing art. You know, it doesn't mean that you're making what you know, you're making contemporary antiquities, right? Um, uh, and so I think some people find it, or at least I find it, extremely anarchist in a way, not about our traditions, but just about life in a assimilation and taking things and turning it into something else. I don't know what to call it, because I'm not very artsy. So help me out here.
It's that, you know, there's a people that talk about how no art is original, right? That everybody's taking the same topics and the same subjects and the same mediums and just reinterpreting it over and over, or adapting it to however it fits its needs.
Yeah.
You know, I had done some art, some ledger art, contemporary ledger art, and it was based on where the wild things were, you know, art. So it was one of my favorite children's books. But I would indigenize the monsters. I would indigenize Max. But that concept of taking something that's universal and applying it, because we all were Max growing up, you know, we were all freaking wild. We all, you know, that story talks about creativity and imagination moving on the boundaries of his house and into this imaginary, you know, landscape of monsters and savagery, and how he fit right in as this wild little 8-year-old boy, probably, you know. Explored that because I love the story, but I wanted it to be mine. You know, I see everything through my indigenous lens, and that's my worldview. That's how I interpret it. And so, you know, when you talk about native poets, well, you know, natives have had poetry. If you've ever listened to some of our songs, it's poetry. It's incredible to hear it within that framework.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm grateful for organizations like Indian Market, for all its issues. It really gives a venue for some of the finest artists in the world to come together, little family reunions of friends and collectors and family and other artists in your community. And it's awesome, man. It's like the biggest art powwow that there is. It's all things powwow in one place at one time. And it's just inspiring. You know, I love being a part of it. So for those of you who don't know me as well, I after law school, I ended up on the board of SWIA, the nonprofit that produces Indian Market. And because of a rough transition one year, we were having trouble finding a director who could dedicate the time, wasn't costing us an arm and a leg, because we're a humble nonprofit. And I was like, well, I think I can do this. It can't be rocket science. We've been doing this for 95 years. Yeah. There's got to be a template, right? This is a whole nother episode someday, talk about that strife of Indian Market a few years back. But we did it. We had a great year. The board invited me to stay on, and so I stuck on board for another 4 years until I started doing some other stuff, and then ended up at NARF. But I love in Santa Fe. If you haven't seen Santa Fe Indian Market, put it on your list, because you will never see anything like it. There's film festival, traditional and haute couture fashion. There's all kinds of peripheral gallery shows and museum shows that spring up. We collaborated with NMAI to do a film festival. One of the best conversations I had at Indian Market was with John Trudell. We were talking about that movie about Wounded Knee, and I remember that deputy director of NMAI, she comes up, she's like, "So Dallin, I know you're a bit of a wild card, and God knows John is too, but we've got serious donors in the audience. Can you please keep it pretty?" And I was like, I guess, but I'm not in the position to try to fucking John Trudell, right?
Hold my beer.
So after, so we had this amazing conversation just about life, very little about the movie, because I sensed that, he knew the movie. We talked, there was youth in the audience, so I really wanted him to really hone in on those cats and be inspiring to them, because that's the next generation, right?
Yeah.
We just had a candid conversation about life. Well, anyway, we were having dinner, and I was, telling him how much I enjoyed it, and I was like, "Hey, man, did NMAI come up and try and tell you to keep it cool?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." And I was like, "Well, what'd you tell him?" He's like, "I told him I can only tell the truth." Thought that was phenomenal, man.
They just went, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, hell or high water. This Indian guy's only going to tell the truth, and he did, man. It was
well, and you can hear him say that. I can totally see and hear how he would say that too.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It was a highlight of my time there for sure.
Good stuff.
I did see. However, I did a dance tour to outside of Brisbane. There's this festival that's all Aboriginal run. It's called the Dreaming Festival. They've been doing it for a number of years, but it's all things music, performing arts. There's panel discussions. We ran into Winona LaDuke out there. We're just walking.
Oh, wow.
She's like, "Hey, Indians." And I was like, "Hey, India."
Winona.
Yeah, I was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, we're just here doing some panels on Indigenous rights and climate change and stuff." I was like, "Oh, okay, we're over here on the stage dancing around." So okay, I'll come check it out. But it was cool, man. Those Aboriginals know how to host a gathering for sure. They're all over, Australia, and there's a bunch of Polynesians and Maoris. There's a bunch of Cook Islanders, islanders from Papua New Guinea. It was cool. We watched this, the Maoris do that haka, and we watched them do a war dance face off with some Aboriginals. Oh man, it was just.
Oh wow.
Kangaroos jumping around because we were kind of out in the bush, and I was asking our handlers, like, "Hey man, they're like hunting laws out here for those. What are those? Are those kangaroos?" And they're like, "No, those are the other ones. What are the wallabies or something?"
Wallaby.
Yeah, right. Wallabies.
Yeah, they're a little smaller. I was like, "Can I go get one? Can we go hunt one of those?" He's like, "Yeah, if you can hunt it, bring it by. We'll cook it up." So fucking running around trying to catch a damn wallaby. It's a little harder than it was.
Did you get one?
No.
You didn't get a boomerang and
I needed something. I needed a spear or an atlatl or something.
atlatl.
It's like one of my dreams is to go on Naked and Afraid, and guy that gains weight and has a 2-story lodge in the trees, like Robinson Crusoe style, right? Makes a living. Yeah, they'll be like,
love that show.
Bring Indians onto this show, man.
Oh, they should. I can't believe they haven't figured out that yet.
Right?
Yeah.
Rock stars. I rely on Tyra to do most of the work, and
there you go.
I'd go wrestle a gator or something.
Go wrestle a gator. Drink some mud and wrestle a gator.
I don't know if I have it on my Instagram, but I might have a photo on Facebook of me wrestling this. We were in Seminole country, and I was delivering some art to their museum. So we took a tour. We got to go on a boat ride, And what's funny is we had watched this guy. It was at the time of their Seminole Fair, and we watched this guy, Billy. He wrestled some gators. Let us, handle this 6-foot gator, but it had its mouth taped shut. Well, they were taking it back to the where they do their swamp rides, and they have a big gator pit. And I was like, "Hey, man, you let me into that pit and count cool on a couple of those gators?" And I didn't expect him to, and he was just like, "Yeah, sure, if you want to." I was like, "Oh shit." I was like, "You need me to sign a waiver or something?" He's like, "Nah, just jump in there." And so he had him and this other guy, they had this big, massive stick, and they were poking this big, massive gator. I can't remember what his name was. It was like Ramses or something. But he was 13 feet and like 900 pounds or 1,100 pounds or something.
Jack your shit.
Yeah, and so I was like, what do I got to know about this? And he was the king of the hill, right? Because all the other gators would avoid him, and he'd go over there. And whenever they'd throw food out, he had first dibs, man. Nobody would touch the food until he got it.
Ramses.
And so he's like, "Well, which one you want?" I was like, "Fuck, the biggest one, man. I want to count coup on the biggest one." He's like, "All right." So they're over there riling him up, and he's just hissing and growling, just like thrashing his tail around. I was like, "Should you be riling him up like that? Tire him out a little bit so he doesn't kill you." I was like, "Okay, yeah, keep riling him up." And so it's so funny because one of those pictures I'm standing and so this is the thing. They're like, "Okay, these things can move like 30 miles an hour for 6 feet. That's how fast and their jaws will." And it did. It got a hold of that stick and just snapped that fucking.
Oh, Jesus.
Just in half. It was incredible. I don't get afraid of much stuff, but I was afraid. I won't lie. I had a very healthy respect for this big, massive beast. And so I felt like I was like at the 7 foot mark, and he's looking at me and his mouth is like this big, just hissing at me, just eyeball to eyeball. And I don't know, at some point I kind of darted in and smacked it on the snout and backed up because he didn't do nothing. He just kind of, I think he was waiting to see what I was really going to do. Right?
He's like, "Did you really slap me in the face?"
Yeah.
Me?
So I did it again just to make sure it was legit.
Oh my God.
But I've got some pictures of me with that gator on my Facebook. It's pretty
Oh
Yeah, I'm
man.
looking for it.
One of them, like my son, like you can see the gator head, and then you can see me looking at the gator. And my son, he was probably 7 at the time, was just looking through the fence. I was like,
Oh, here we go.
"Oh my God, I'm gonna watch my dad die today."
Oh man. That reminds me of the South Park episode where they did a spoof on the crocodile hunter,
Oh,
and they're like, and every time the crocodile hunter they showed him, he's like, I'm gonna go put the stick up this alligator's ass and really piss him off, and everything. So every animal he'd go after was he gonna stick this stick up his ass and piss him off.
that's the one right there. You found
That's
it.
Oh man,
Yeah, it's crazy.
that is
Good
crazy.
times. The Seminoles are nuts, man.
Yeah, they are.
That was the baby one. That was the 6 footer.
The baby one.
Yeah.
Look at this guy. That's
Oh, I've seen some of the videos of those guys getting snapped in the face.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, what
Oh, nice.
happens? They actually have a reflex where even if it's just like a drop of sweat that touches
Mhm.
in their mouth, it just forces this closure, right?
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
And we, the Caddos, we have an actual alligator dance that goes all through the night. It's all for the alligator.
Nice.
I'll catch a snake or two, but I don't know about the alligators. I was in Louisiana. It was at Tunica, Biloxi at their casino.
Yeah, casino.
And I'm on the phone and I'm looking out. I have this indoor patio kind of thing, and I'm looking out and I'm like, oh, there's a cool like display of alligators down there, and all of a sudden one of them moves, and I'm like, holy hell, there's freaking live gators inside the hotel.
Yeah, that's
It was
crazy.
awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah, I loved it out there. It's a good
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Louisiana's a good place.
So how's NARF treating you?
NARF's awesome. I prosecuted briefly out of law school, and then ended up at Indian Market at a nonprofit, and it was because my buddy Don, who was working at NARF, he's been at NARF for 26 years or something.
Yeah.
But we had a relationship with them, and we would do these panel discussions and just have a great time talking about art and activism. But I ended up doing, because of a variety of reasons, but I did, you're kind of the face of the org, so people, I've always considered myself a bit of an introvert, but that job taught me, and dance theater taught me, you just can't be when you're interacting with other people in the public. So I got into a lot of fundraising, wrote some grants and things. And so when this position opened up, I applied for it. And I actually didn't get it the first time I had applied. I went to another talented guy who does some fundraising. He works for Indian Collective now. He was a great foundation guy, but went on to some other stuff. And so the position reopened. And Don was cool, man. He was like, I kind of feel like I know who's out there in Indian country doing development. I know you want to practice the law, but, can you come do this? And I was like, NARF? Yeah, hell yeah, man. I'll come do this. And the majority of NARF's budget, easily 65%, is all philanthropy, foundations, tribes, individual donors. Like I mentioned before, most of our clients couldn't afford the type of high-level legal representation we can provide, but we've got to do it because it's too critical. So there's, I handle all the foundation stuff, bring in a lot of money. It's been good. A lot of people, especially now with these conversations about racial equity, a lot of people want to help. And we've had some long-time foundation support, like the Ford Foundation was initially one of the first grants that kicked off NARF, right out of the civil rights movement. They were born out of that time, and in the early 70s, John Echohawk was the first graduate out of UNM's legal program, and went out to California to start this California Legal Defense Fund. And we realized that, it was a generous grant from Ford, a little bit of government money, but they realized that this was so much bigger than just representing only California tribes. So a year or two later, they relocated to Denver because it was a little more in the middle of Indian country, major airport. They could get all over the place. And 50 years later, here we are. So I love what I do. I love working in Indian country. It has its challenges. You see the wins and the losses, and it's frustrating. But it's nice to know how much support we do have out there that we often don't see.
Yeah.
It gets swept under a little bit. But.
Yeah, we're really glad that the Native American Rights Fund is around, and John Echohawk is also on our board at the association.
Oh yeah.
So it's really great that we have that partnership, and we love to work with NARF. And but yeah, I think I was talking to John about you, and when you first got on, and I'm like, oh, I'd really like Dallin to come to our repatriation conference. We could really use him. He's such a great advocate. Well, only if he's going to be doing business development. Like, only if he's going to.
Only if he's working.
Now,
only if he's working.
Right.
We are always angling, man. We are a small 5-person army in the development team. Yeah. So we got to hustle for sure. But Don's probably the only one who travels a little more than Don and I do prior to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll register for that repatriation project. That's something that I've always loved seeing and have wanted to participate on in a larger capacity on the legal side, but it just hasn't been there yet. I have my own little repatriation project going. You can see some of the masks hanging. We talked about it the other day for viewers. These false face masks, we use them in our longhouse ceremonies. These corn husk masks, they're called kajisats.
Mm-hmm.
but for a long time, there was a tourism draw, and so people would carve them. There were some initiatives around the Depression where certain museums were paying Indian artists to simply create, so they created what they knew. They created masks. There was carvers, there was people that created outfits, dresses and leggings and shirts and things. Our turtle rattles. So some museums have had massive collections. Luckily, I was able to be a part of one of the groups that first went into one of these museums to view their collection and see masks that a lot of us had never seen before, just different styles and different stories. It was really phenomenal. So, because of this tourism market, you'll see these masks kind of pop up in the strangest places. But if I can find them and if I have enough money, I'll buy them and take them off the market. And I'm holding them. At some point, I'll give them back to the Longhouse. Right now, they've repatriated quite a few of them, so they just don't really have the space. Maybe with the new museum, they might, maybe if they can utilize some of that space. But I got them. I take care of them. I talk to them. We have, we feed them.
Yep.
But I also believe that they take care of me and my family. Usually when you're part of that society, you have a mask that's in your home. You have a mask that you travel with, a smaller version. There's a whole protocol to it. It's really, really interesting. Yeah. But I've got some great stories about how some of these masks have found their way to me, and where some of them have come from. I have this one. I'll show you guys because it's one you probably won't ever see ever again.
Are you sure we can see it?
Yes.
Okay.
This guy's proud. He's proud. So typically, these corn husk masks are one-sided, just the face, right?
Yeah.
Well, look at this one.
Wow.
So this one.
Wow.
Back piece that's almost like a helmet, right? Just phenomenal. Never seen another one like it. I've never even heard of them.
Yeah, no, I've never seen one like that.
So, Santa Fe Indian Market comes around and there's all these peripheral shows, right? There's art auctions, contemporary and Western, antique shows. And a lot of these dealers make the same rounds. And so I'll go and I'll have a conversation with them. If they have some masks, I'll ask them where they got them and all that good stuff. And it's nice because a lot of them are like, hey, I didn't know that about these. I just thought they were another tourism piece. I'm like, well, it technically is, but these are also very much still utilized in our ceremonies and they shouldn't be sold. And they're like, okay, yeah, I won't buy anymore. One step at a time,
Yep.
But this particular mask, I went to this show and I'm not wealthy by any means. But I'll squirrel away $600 or $800 over the years because I know I will always see a mask or two. And that's usually enough to buy maybe one or two masks, maybe some small ones. So I went to the show and I'm wandering around the first night and I see this piece with the helmet, I call it. And I was talking to the dealer and asking him about it. And he's like, oh yeah, this is a very rare piece. And I was like, no, I know this comes from our tribes. We use these still. And I said, oh, okay. We're talking. And this is actually a guy I've had a conversation with before. And I was asking him, and I was like, oh, so, he knows my brother very well. My brother collects a lot of different art. And he's a phenomenal bead worker, Ken Williams. You should look up his work. But anyway, so I was asking him the price. He's like, oh, this is a steal. I have it at $3,200. It's down from like $4,800 for this show. And I was like, oh, fuck, man, how am I going to afford that? I've got $800 to try and buy some masks. But this also means, I just kind of put it out of my mind. I didn't even go to the show the second day. Showed up on Sunday, and I walk over there, and I thought about it all weekend. I was like, how am I gonna get this mask off this market? Right, I want to get this mask. And I go up to this guy's booth, and I'm like, hey, Barry, He's like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" So I thought he recognized me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "So, I see you still have the GSOT." He's like, "Oh yeah, that's a very rare piece." And he gave me the same song and dance, and I was like, "You already gave me the 5-minute sales pitch, right?" And then I got the sense that he didn't recognize me. And I'm not the most forgettable guy, right? The
Right.
6'2" Indian guy, long hair, director of fucking SWIA, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm like kind of looking around. Am I being punked right now? What's going on? I was like, "What do you got on this piece?" And he's like, "Oh, I have it at a great price right now. I've got it at $800. And I was like, "Huh, I'll take it." I don't know who did the Jedi mind trick on at the price point I could afford, but that's how I ended up with that piece.
Wow.
So, I've always felt like this thing comes into your life as you need it. And I, from some experiences I had early on, if you want to be a powerful person in whatever realm it is, spiritual, economic, whatever it is, you got to surround yourself with powerful things and powerful people. So, my art collection is kind of eclectic, but I want to see these things. I want to feel like they're a part of my everyday life and help guide some of these decisions and directions that I make for myself and my loved ones. And in return, I've seen some amazing things happen. Right?
That's beautiful.
Cool story.
That's damn beautiful.
Very.
Yeah.
That's damn beautiful. JD says he's honored and that you shared all of this with us.
Oh, good, man.
Yeah.
Glad you guys joined us. Yeah.
So we're kind of in a lull all of a sudden.
I'm sorry, I was reading the chat, what JD was putting in there. He said, "I believe this is relevant to the discussion. History's remixed Jim and Note."
Note. And thumbs up.
All right.
Does anyone want to address that? Or you just like to read? Yeah.
No, I was trying to figure it out myself.
All right, JD, you got to be clear. More clear.
If you, Shannon, so I know you're putting together this repatriation project. If you need some pinch hitters, I'm ready to discounted registration.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, hey, we
Talk
have
about whatever you want.
scholarship applications are available through September 4th, and we actually have a nice chunk of money to pay for full registration costs.
All right.
So go to our website. So we have our 6th annual repatriation conference. It's October 26th through 28th. It's completely virtual. It's going to be a really nice conference. It's commemorating 30 years of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. And we have scholarships. All of you in the chat room, anyone interested in repatriation, please go apply for a scholarship. It's really likely that you're going to get it because we've got a good chunk of change for it. So, so apply, Dallin, and we'll see you there. And I might have the need for a speaker somewhere or the other. If John will let you go.
Oh, he'll let me go. I just have to, swing in some work into it or something.
There you go.
I think it's relevant because when we're out there hunting for money, you got to be able to talk about NARF at length, right? Our casework, our programming. So, our attorneys can get pretty siloed into the work that they do, whereas Dawn and I, we've got to read, all the briefs. We've got to read all the decisions. We've got to be able to discuss with whatever donor at any given time what's happening, in Indian country in the legal field. We got to know our programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a luxury that a lot of our staffers don't have to have. So I don't mind it. I like it. We've actually, interestingly, just brought on Patrice Kunesh, who's a major officer, who's also an attorney. So we've got 3 attorneys in Indian country working just on development for Native American Rights Fund.
Damn.
We can talk
that's
about it like
a
nobody
lot of
else.
power.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
That's a lot of Indian power there. Oh yeah, well NARF is always a sponsor, so thanks Don for mentioning that. We were really disappointed that NARF didn't get to do its 50th anniversary that was set to be in May. So we'll be glad when NARF reschedules and hopefully has an in-person.
We're talking about doing it in April, but all things considering, we're trying to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Official, in person. You know, I think like most Indians, we'll find an excuse to come together and have a good time.
Yeah, regardless.
So whether it's 2 years after our actual 50th, this is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Have some social distancing 49ers.
We're gonna figure this out. Yeah.
All have beaded masks.
Yeah.
That beaded masks of the who is that doctor who
Fauci. Yeah.
Dr. Fauci's beaded mask.
I saw that.
Yeah. That's pretty hilarious. All right, Lance is asking what repatriation means. So I think we should answer this because that's a pretty.
We talk about it all the time, and maybe people don't understand what that is.
Yeah.
So you're best to talk about that, Shannon.
Well, no. What about?
I agree, man. I think you're the
get it back, girl. Get it back, girl. Get it back, girl.
Embrace it.
So
you're a cool mom, not a regular mom.
All right, I'm the cool mom. So repatriation is the returning of our ancestors, their burial belongings, other cultural and sacred objects from museums, private collectors, federal agencies, auction houses, anywhere. There's an act called Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act that was passed November 16th, 1990. So it'll be 30 years old in November. It will be commemorating at our conference. And NAGPRA has, it's a little bit limited. So repatriation under NAGPRA is a little more limited. It only applies to what I call public hands and public lands. It doesn't apply to private dealers or auction houses who hold the same exact items that are protected under NAGPRA.
Or universities, private universities.
Right, private universities. Well, actually, most universities receive some sort of federal funding, so you can usually get universities under NAGPRA. But it's something that has really helped bring back culture and cultural items that were just literally stolen and through violence and other nefarious means. And those items still are stolen today. There's still a trafficking of our items, and they're being taken now internationally. And so we have a draft law called the STOP Act, Safeguarding Tribal Objects of Patrimony, that's currently, I think it's in before the Senate. I'm not quite sure where it's at, but hopefully it's going to be passed soon to help prevent some of that trafficking to other countries.
One of the most Shannon. One of the most pressing or important issues when it comes to repatriation is the utter uselessness that some of these museums and universities have committed to keeping the bones of our ancestors in storage. They have no value whatsoever to them other than they're basically being held hostage from being where they're supposed to be. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest things that weighs on my heart when I found out that these stores of bones are just sitting in these places, just being hoarded, with no usefulness whatsoever. They've already been cataloged and studied, and they became useless because they couldn't put them on display or whatever. So they just continue to store them in these warehouses. And I think that's one of the biggest atrocities that's out there when it comes to repatriation.
There are 13 institutions that hold 56% of known ancestors. So those are individual
just 13
representing our ancestors. I always have trouble talking about it because English, I don't think English has the proper respect for when you're trying to have conversations about this. It's really always hard for me to talk about. But some of those institutions include Harvard Peabody, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Nebraska. Those are states whose university and museum institutions hold a lot of our ancestors' human remains, their burial items, and other cultural and sacred.
Yes, Lance. Yes, Lance. It does. It includes the bone.
Bones.
Yeah.
And so there's about 160,000 known ancestors that have not yet been repatriated, and that's
there's a little bit of a legal loophole on how you define direct ancestors of some of these bones, and if there's not a clear-cut path, then institutions can claim that there's nobody to repatriate them to, and it's just absolutely false.
Right. Yeah, the Ninth Circuit in the Kennewick Man case
exactly
said exactly that. It was too old to be Native American, and so one of the things.
Because we're new, right?
Well, that somehow the connection was lost. It's just too old. We couldn't be related to them. It's just too old. It makes absolutely no sense.
One of these days I'll have to share my story. I created an art piece that's a finger necklace. It's based on a finger necklace I had seen in some ethnographic publication or something, but I wore it to Gathering of Nations one year, and it was surprising how many people didn't understand what was happening. And people are like, how do you get fingers? I'm like, the same way any museum gets fingers. I'll give them back as soon as we get all ours. Fair trade.
Yes.
It was funny, when I was creating that piece, I was doing some consulting work for a buddy of mine who was putting together this native destination in Niagara Falls, bit of an entrepreneur, successful businessman. But we were still newer in our relationship, and so he came in to look at. He owned a hotel, and I was staying in one of his rooms, and he's like, "Let me come see what you're working on." So I thought he meant my art project, but he was really working on this. It was this proposal thing. That's what he wanted to see. So I'm showing him this finger necklace in the works. It was like 2 months later. He's like, "Man, I got to talk to you about that finger necklace, man. I didn't know what I was dealing with, man. I was like, what do these giants do other than like throw boulders around and stuff? They like make necklaces out of, you're gonna kill me." I was like looking for an exit strategy. This thing.
Looking to see if there's some shrunken heads.
Yeah, he's like, I literally wondered if I could survive the jump out the window from the second floor.
Oh, God. Poor guy.
No, man, these are all non-Indians, dude. You got nothing to worry about, bro. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
That's what you should have said at the powwow. Yeah. Oh, no. These are white folk.
If you want to see the piece, you can see it on my Facebook. I don't know if I have it on Instagram, but I might have it on Facebook.
Ooh, man. Yeah.
That's good stuff.
I need one of those finger necklaces.
Or anyway, a pair of earrings or something.
Yeah.
Make sure they're real pale, and
I'm not the only one like this, though. Believe it or not, there's a whole cross section of
Oh yeah.
years. I go to this event in the high desert of California called Wasteland Weekend. It's this amazing Mad Max themed Burning Man type thing. So everybody's an outfitter, all the cars and this little city that pops up. And one day I was walking around and this guy, you know, it's a lot of alcohol, but this guy's like, "Hey man, you want to try this homemade wine? It's made with some berries or something." I was like, "Yeah, sure." So he pulls out this Tibetan Kapala, which is, if you don't know, it's the skull cap of a human, right? And they embellish it with silver and all this other stuff. It was supposed to be pretty ceremonial at some point, but now you can buy them on eBay. So talk about
Jesus.
crazy. You know, the accessibility of some of this stuff is it's out. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah. Yeah, there are items all over, and we're constantly seeing them in eBay. And Dallin, if you're not on our auction alert list, I should put you on when I get back to the office tomorrow, because we're constantly watching trade going on at auctions, both internationally and domestically. And yeah, there's still quite a few false faces.
I follow a few of the more domestic auction houses just for any sort of Western or Native art, just to see what I can find on there.
Yeah.
But I don't follow too much overseas. I'd like to. That's where a lot of action is. Guy approached me about creating a nonprofit that provides consultation to tribes in regards to domestic collectors who may want to repatriate things to tribes and don't know how to do it, or for whatever reason, maybe they think they can get a tax incentive or something, but broker those relationships. And I know that there are groups that do that, but some of these collectors, they're skittish and they're arrogant and they're all kinds of things. And so fine line, I hope we can maybe delve into that world, because he's a bit of an art appraiser for Native art. But we'll, you know, we all got to try and see how we can best tackle that issue.
Yeah, it is difficult, and there's a lot of egos involved, folks that are dealers, and it's similar to how museums feel about us. You know, for some reason they're more capable of caring for these items. We've been taking care of these for you. And so we hate to see them go back and, well, you'll just sell them again, or you'll put them in the ground, or, oh my God, put them back to use. It's just some of the ego in the dealers. And I won't go there, because then we're going to be off in another conversation here, and I'm going to get on a tirade.
I like what JD just said in the chat room. He said, and the settlers get upset because statues of their symbols of hate are toppled, yet they desecrate everything of others in their path. Yeah, you know, I mean, see them all up in arms about some brass statues from some of their traders that they had against their own state, you know, and we got 150,000 ancestors that are sitting upside down in boxes in museums, you know.
Yeah.
They were removed from their resting places.
And it's not just us. The Museum of Man in San Diego, I was there not even 3 or 4 years ago. And I walk in, and there's this little child, mummified child, on display in a nook. Came out of Peru or something. And I was horrified. I couldn't friggin' believe it. I was like, you know, I don't care if it's not Native or not, but how are you going to put somebody's child on display?
Yeah.
So, but you know, so I thought I would write a letter or something. I wanted to get involved, and come to find out there was a group that had already taken on that issue and gotten the child removed from display, but at least, but they still had a picture of her mummified body, just, you know, with an explanation of where why the display is being pulled down. And I heard that even that got removed.
Yeah.
At least something positive happened there.
Wow.
It's sad. It's so sad. I mean, the devastation of a child being lost to a family, and then them laying them to rest, and then to think all these years later that that's being desecrated and put on display like some type of like an art piece. It's
Right. That we're
beyond
not really
words.
human,
Beyond
right?
words.
That they're not really human, and
Yeah, but those brass statues are real important. Really important. Those brass statues. That's heritage. That's heritage.
Well, what's funny is in the same breath that they talk about justifying their collections, we talk about removing those symbols of hate, and they are outraged. Fucking
Outraged, I'm telling you. Outraged.
Over it, right?
They're in the streets with guns strapped to their chest.
Mm-hmm.
Or brass statues. There's something going on. There's a big fear going on in them right now, and that's what's happening. There's a big fear.
Well, I'd hoped we could talk more about alien theory, but
we didn't get to talk about aliens at all.
It's been 2 hours. I don't want to keep our guests too long.
Oh man, and my butt starts to hurt, man. Sitting down 2 hours, I can't move.
Well, if you pump that thing up a little bit.
My butt?
Yes.
More
eat a little more. You're looking like a rail. Look at you. Your elbows are shooting through your shoulders there. Look like you got elbows on your shoulders.
Okay, thank you for my shoulders.
I'm massive, and I thought, oh, everything's massive. I thought I had a huge ass being this big. The tire's like, no, you got an Indian ass. It's just bigger.
Flat.
I'm fascinated with giant people, so I collect Andre the Giant art.
Oh.
I was watching some documentary stuff on him recently, and talk about an impressive dude who had some real massive problems with this. How big he was. It was awesome. Yeah. I can still fit on a plane, not comfortably, but the cusp of being super uncomfortable. Person in front of my knees are literally against the person's chair in front of me. They can't lean back, so I feel bad.
Yeah, let's not get you next to us on the next flight out.
Well, it's funny because I do a lot of flying now. I'm leaving tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact. And some of the planes are like social distance. They're very, very strict about everything. And then I don't know what it is, but when I come back and usually when I fly to LA, when I come into LA, it's like they pack it. I mean, every seat, there isn't a seat left in the plane. And it's like, what is going on here? It's odd. So, like I said, a lot of the flights everywhere where I'm going, it's all social distance. Half the flight's full. The airports are wonderful right now. Going through the airport is like nothing. You go through security and like 10 minutes you're sitting and waiting for your flight. But for some reason, coming back to LA, I'm always in these packed planes.
And you should be getting hazard pay.
I think now with the extra precautions, it's sort of relatively safer to fly than I think it was initially.
Yeah.
About air circulation, they were saying they pump fresh air like 40 times in a minute into the cabin. It's not like it's just recirculating.
Yeah.
Outside.
Well, they come in after each flight, and literally these crews come and they spray the whole plane down and wipe it all down. And then when you get on the flight, they give you a handful of the wipes, so you can wipe your seat down and everything again. But they come in and you see them, they're spraying all the seats down and wiping them all down as they're coming in. And it seems like there's no real, nothing safer than staying home, of course.
Right.
But
I have had to travel a bit, and the first couple flights I was a little, hyper aware and hyper sensitive, but enough sanitation wipes and hand sanitizer will kill anything.
I'm hoping.
Stuff behind my ears just in case.
It smells good. Ooh, lemon fresh scent. Yes.
Tea tree oil. Anyway,
Well, what do you think? Should we call it a night?
yeah, I certainly appreciated the conversation, though, you guys. Thanks for having me on.
It was great, Dallin. It was great having you.
Yes. Yes, you're wonderful. You and your big ass Sasquatchness. We are so happy to have you on our show.
Call him a big ass asshole.
Definitely, I'm going to plug NARF. Go check out the website to see all the great work that we're doing.
Yep.
You can see a lot of my art at Thunder Beef 4. That's another story for another day.
Thunder Beef 4.
Thunder Beef. Yeah, I was wondering what Thunder Beef meant, but I guess I could
Whatever
guess.
you want it to mean. It's
I like it.
be relatively anonymous, but my artwork doesn't leave me to much anonymity. So.
No, it can't. It can't. It can't. We want to talk about it. It's cool.
I do have a Facebook art page, Thunder Sound Fine Arts. You can find me there.
Oh, that's the one you send your mom to, right?
Yeah.
here's my Facebook, Mom.
You might see a finger necklace on Facebook. So it's not super PG, but yeah, it's good stuff. All right.
All right, Dallin. Well, thank you very much. You have a great rest of the week, and we'll get you on again.
That'd be awesome. I'd enjoy that.
Alien. We're going to talk about some alien stuff.
Man, I didn't know we were going to talk about aliens, though.
Good stuff right there. All right, guys.
All right. Well, you take care.
Okay.
We'll see you later.
All right, sis. You
Yes.
know what we kind of didn't do this show? We didn't give thanks to the first people of our lands that we stand on. The Kuya Indians, the Agua Calientes, or the Kumyi Band of Southern California. I wanted to mention them, and I'd like to give you a chance also.
Well, I want to thank the Piscataway and the other nations that have been in the area of Maryland where I am now. I want to thank them, and I know they're down the road. And I need to get some folks from Piscataway on.
Yeah, let's get a Piscataway on here.
Yeah. But anyway, it's been a really great show, Roy. Glad to have you back. Next week,
Be back.
we are going to have an actress with us. Her name's Kimberly Guerrero. And if you remember the Seinfeld episode where he had a Native American girlfriend.
Yep.
She's done some wonderful things since that. But that's Kimberly. And she's Colville and Salish Kootenai and Cherokee. And she'll be with us next week.
Cool.
So don't forget Association on American Indian Affairs.
Don't forget 'em.
Brought you this lovely show. And we're so glad that you all joined us. Roy, you got anything else? Last words?
Nope. Thank you. Thank you for chat room, for all the awesome interaction and your support. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, please. And Periscope. You can find us on Periscope and the Facebooks and the Twitters. And you just give us a little comment, little like, and a little subscribe, and we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, please. Rub some bear fat on it. It'll be all right. Okay. Have a wonderful Sunday evening, everybody. And we'll see you next week.
On Red Hoop Talk. See ya.
Red Hoop Talk.